are Smart City Navigators, a podcast about innovation, sustainability, and new technologies on the market.
This podcast is brought to you by NaviParking. Estera Sendecka is an interdisciplinary designer and artist with vast experience in both digital and print design. In her position as a creative graphic designer at NaviParking, she views design as a link between technology, business, and marketing needs of a company. Having worked in different fields and for many brands, ad agencies, tech companies, NGOs, and publishing houses, she believes that the best designs come from asking the right questions, through teamwork, and showing empathy. Let's welcome Estera Sendecka in today's episode of Smart City Navigators podcast. Hello, Estera.
Hi, Michał.
You have a very rare name.
That's true.
Is there any story behind this name?
Yeah, but that would be a topic for another podcast, I believe.
And the title will be The Story Behind Estera's Name.
Yeah, that would be like a plenty of place for anecdotes, story about my dad. So he's like a different brand hero, as you would make.
But I think this name matched to what you do in your life, also about your presence, and also about your job, which you do here at NaviParking. So welcome to Smart City Navigators podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Our today's topic is generalists versus specialists. Let's start with that. What would you say about generalists versus specialists?
Sure. So when you think about this dilemma, you tend to think about polar opposites. Like you can be either a specialist or a generalist. Whereas in truth, it's about being in a range. So it's not really polar opposites. It's about being in a spectrum of specialization, because we are all specialists. It just depends how much specialist are you, or maybe you are leaning towards the generalist side of the spectrum. This whole dilemma is important on an individual level, like when it comes to career planning, when it comes to, thinking about your career as an individual, whether you want to specialize deeply and excel at that, or whether you want to dip in different fields and combine it to a whole new different level of value that you bring to a company. But it's not only about individual level, it's a dilemma also for teams, whole teams, for the whole market. Who should you bet on? Should you bet on specialists? Will they get the job done? Or do you need people who have more general, diverse background, and they will help you achieve what you want and excel in the market?
And which one is more efficient in startup community from your perspective?
You can think that startups favor generalists because of the fact that we have limited resources. So we don't have, for example, in a creative field, we don't have 20 motions designers at our disposal and this many art directors and copywriters, etc. We have a limited amount of people who have to deliver those things, because no matter if you are a small company or a big company, you still have social media presence, you still have clients, you still have, all the assets that need to be delivered. And it's just the question of how you will get the job done. Do you need 20 people in order to achieve that, or do you need just a few of them, and this will do the job as well? So you may think that startups would need versatile people with a different set of skills, different set of experiences, because they can do the job and there will be only a few of them. But at the same time, in order to stand out in the market, you need something special. So you need a specialist, right? You need people who have this sort of skills that will make you a leader in the market, and they are the people who can do the job. So basically, you need both. I really like this quote from Freeman Dyson. He was a mathematician, and he said that there are two different types of scientists. There are people who are frogs and people who are birds. And frogs are down in the mud, looking at the granular level, looking at flowers, looking at the very tiny details. And then you have birds who, flock over the big pond with frogs and can, manage them, or just have this bird's eye view perspective on the whole process. So of course we need both. We need a good mix of generalist and specialist. I would say what is most important is that we need people who are self-aware, because it also depends on your talent, on your personality. Not everyone should be a generalist and not everyone should be a specialist. I think this is something that should be decided on an individual level, so it would match your career, it would match your personality. So in startups, we need people who are self-aware, who can specialize or be generalist according to their individual traits.
And the startup is I think it's a perfect environment for people like this, because startup provides also self-development for those people.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing that is so special about this environment is you're basically, you have a job title, right? But the job description and what you are actually going to deliver, this is something that can be established on individual level. It can be something that is discussed. This is not something that is, very strict. And if you have something to do, you just check your job description and you're like, well, I can't deliver because it's not there. You can't be a self-made professionalist at startup. If you do it, within the things that we need to deliver, there is still a space for personality, individuality, and all the traits that make you a great professional.
Okay, so let's say, for example, I'm from totally different background, let's say corporate background or even governmental background, and then I just jump into a startup community. Are there any risks up there?
It's often the case with people who are early specializers. So they decide to follow a certain path very early in their career, and they don't really get different contexts, different experiences, and they can't really, diversify their view of the process. And this is a huge risk because we all work in a team, right? We all work together to deliver a solution, and this is crucial that we are aware of the fact that we need to facilitate the process, not only deliver this one thing that we're asked for, but understand and be a part of the process.
And this is what I like here at NaviParking. Anyway, at the startup community, because we can elaborate together in one issue. Let's say, for instance, I have an issue with something and I can, contact with you and you can help me right away. I remember we've been chatting a couple of days before, and I was asking you, can you do this animation at After Effects to me? And you were like, of course, just, give me a files, I'll do it for you, right? Because let's say I was, for instance, overload, right?
Yeah, we can count on each other. And, I think when we get context, because context is really the king, I believe, gathering context and understanding each other's perspective, then we can be better coworkers. Because I really believe that, ignorance assumes malice. So if we fight this ignorance, if we fight this fact that we don't understand each other's perspectives, then we can deliver excellence, right? And we are focused on the goal, right? We're not focused on this part of our assembly line that we have to deliver, and whatever comes next and whatever came before. We are focused on the end product that we want to achieve together. And this makes me excited. Like when we are collaborating together, we all have different experiences and we can put it together in our beautiful jar, which is this podcast. And create something meaningful. And this is what really excites me. And I think that startups is just, a beautiful place to do such work.
At the end, we see the results. I remember we've been chatting, a couple of us, and we've been looking for projects, and we were like, wow, this is life. This is already done, right? It was a very, helpful and cheerful situation.
Yeah, it was. It just, this whole project brought me so much joy. And I don't believe we would have been able to achieve this on our own. Each of us brought this perfect generalist and specialist at the same time perspective to this project, and that made it excellent, I believe.
So this podcast might be a very good example, but also you might have some other examples, maybe from outside of the startup community.
I wanted to tell a story about my studies, actually. because I had the opportunity to study an interdisciplinary program, I believe. It was in Polish, it's called editorstwo, so editorial studies. And this was a mixture of, this classical philological studies that you have with, literature, philosophy, etc. But also it had like this strong focus on preparing you for an outside world, which was working in publishing houses. So you have these classes, for example, about book design, about print design, about, marketing in publishing houses. So it was very, very concrete and very focused on, you being a professional. So as can you imagine, there were a lot of different people following the program. There were people who were focused more on the language side of preparing a book, so being an editor-in-chief, being excellent in Polish grammar and being able to correct everyone every time. And there were people more focused on design. They wanted to be book designers. They were interested in typography. But we all had to follow the same program. We all had to take the classes that we weren't necessarily interested in. And some of the people had this attitude, why do I need that? I want to be a book designer. I want to be a type designer. I don't want to have another advanced Polish grammar classes, for God's sake, right? So we didn't understand really why the program was designed the way it was. It was really time consuming. And for a lot of people, it was frustrating, especially the ones who wanted to specialize early. And years after graduation, I understand why the program was designed the way it was, because people who followed the program are excellent professionals. And, it's not about shaming people who don't follow the program. It's about the fact that we can feel the difference whether people had followed it or not, because they do not understand the full process of designing a book. They don't understand why editor-in-chief prepares the files for a book designer the way he does. Whereas people who did follow the program, who did take the classes that they weren't really interested in following after graduating, they have the full context. They are better coworkers, they are better professionals. So, the conclusion that we can take from that is to avoid specializing too early, because you won't get the opportunity to understand the full process. You will miss the opportunity of being a better coworker who has more empathy and more understanding of your coworker perspective. It doesn't mean that you can do it all. It just means that you have full context because you've experienced it firsthand. You've not read it in a book, you've done it. You've done bits of it and you understand what's the issue and you can help with that.
Okay, we can treat this as a very good tip for the future generations. So maybe you have any other tips?
I would say get as many different experiences as you can get. If you're a designer, you may profit from specializing early in the short run, but in the long run, it would be better if you get as many different experiences as possible. Go work in an agency, go work in a startup, go to a print shop, a local print shop, go work in a small studio, go work in a big studio. Just, gather as many different experiences as you can. Don't focus on, following this junior, mid, senior path in one of the branches, in agency, in startup, whatever. It's not important. The most important thing is to gather as much context as possible. The second thing I would suggest is ask questions. Ask your coworkers, just look at, if possible, because we are all working in this hybrid mode, but if you have the possibility, just ask them about their job, ask how they work, what do they need, understand the way they work, because thanks to that, you can be a better coworker, you can get your job done better, you can collaborate, you can exchange ideas.
Any more tips?
Maybe let's end with a quote. So do you know the saying, a jack of all trades is a master of none?
Ooh, that's a good one.
But do you know the full saying?
Nope.
Because most of people focus on the first part. But the full saying goes, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Do you have any your own personal experience, included with this quote?
People tend to shame generalists, I believe. They think that, even on this very colloquial level, that specialist just sounds a bit better than a generalist. Don't get misled by that. Just read the full quote.
Estera, this is a very nice episode of podcast.
It's so nice doing this together.
Yes. So I hope to see you on the next episode. Maybe we can just, dive deep into some other creative topics as well.
It would be a pleasure.
All right. So have a good day.
Yeah, you too. See you.
Thank you for listening to Smart City Navigators podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Join the conversation by leaving a comment and sharing your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, in which we'll do another deep dive into a topic related to innovation, sustainability, and new technologies. See you next time.